Katrina bread. All we got to eat is bread, you hear me? We doing bad out here.
boat had started going down because it was attached to the trailer. So I got out the window into the boat, cut the strap on the boat, and bailed the water out, and brought the boat to the window. And the water was deep enough to where, you know, the truck was sitting in the driveway, and we were back and forth here, you know, every day or so. And we were able to just go right over the top of the truck. I mean, the truck was sitting there in a boat. You were going over the truck. So.
Thank you for coming to the second meeting of the Health Services and Social Services Committee of the Mayor's Bring New Orleans Back Committee. I know it's quite a hardship for people to come here at 5:30 in the evening in the middle of traffic, job and family obligations, house obligations, insurance obligations, and everything else all of us who are from New Orleans have going on. I'm happy to see such a good turnout at this meeting because this is a very important meeting where we'll be discussing issues related to the environmental health of the citizens of our city. So again, thank you for coming.
I got together with the mayor and a few other people and talked about putting together a commission that would be able to advise him, coming from a cross-section of all of his community, a group that would be well regarded, that would give him honest recommendations that we would hope be helpful to him in bringing New Orleans back.
That commission is composed of 18 citizens of the city of New Orleans who are acting as an advisory panel to make a report and recommendation to the mayor, to the public, and to other elected officials as to what the rebuild and redesign of our city should look like as a result of the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
One of the biggest problems facing New Orleans in the rebuilding is how big is New Orleans going to be? Not only in terms of its population, how many people will live here, and that estimate really changes a lot depending on who you talk to, but what will be the physical land area that can support that population and vice versa, that population can support. Right now, New Orleans has a strange shape, and there are people, a very, very strange shape, and there are people living in a fairly broadly distributed land area. If the city comes back at half of its population, or 2/3 of its population even, it's pretty difficult to justify maintaining that much land area. But it becomes a very difficult question to determine whether you can make the city physically smaller, and if you can, how you do that while maintaining social equity amongst all the various interesting groups that live here in New Orleans, how you maintain economic equity. Who do you say to, gosh, you know, we're sorry, but that neighborhood isn't going to exist anymore? That's a tough question. Cities have answered it before, and cities will answer it again.
I think that the housing stock can be in every neighborhood of New Orleans. A large portion of it can be salvaged. It's structurally, it can be rebuilt. Whether that economically it makes sense to do it, that's a different story. But structurally, except for the houses that were in very close proximity to the levee breaches, where the water poured through and knocked them off their pilings or their slabs or their foundations or whatever, those of course have to be raised. But the other ones, from what we can tell through these committee meetings, really, and hearing people talk, is that it can be, it can be salvaged. Now, what happens if FEMA, says, we're just not going to issue flood insurance in Lower Ninth Ward, or New Orleans East? I mean, the big, one of the big things floating around now is to turn lots of areas of the city back into green space.
Right now, with building codes and with what's going to happen with elevation, I mean, a lot of people are saying that you're gonna, your insurance is gonna like double if you don't match the elevation that's going to be required.
Don't raise the house.
Yeah, you'll have to raise the house, and obviously we're not going to raise this. So we don't know what we're going to do. I mean, we're not going to demolish it, but maybe sell it. Maybe, we just wait and see, leave it sit for a year or so and just wait and see.
First of all, I'm frustrated that we're not seeing more happening on the street. Let me say, I think the mayor and the city council probably are also. We need to see more things happening. We need to see people beginning to bring themselves back. I've been through a lot of hurricanes, and this is the first one where I've seen us sit around and wait while we're doing planning. And I think maybe we're a little bit caught up in the planning and not enough in how we make things happen on the street. I've said about the city council we need the legislative branch to implement any kind of plan. The plan we come up with, if we don't do the right thing, whatever kind of plan that comes out of this, and we need them involved. I've tried to get them involved, and yet, I have not been able to make it happen yet. I'm still trying to.
My sense is that in general, there's a feeling out there that most people want to come home, to the extent that they consider it home. But for some people, that's a long way off, a lot longer than others. Just because
Do you think that's the case?
I do. I mean, you hear a lot, like people that live in the Ninth Ward, they're coming home. They want to come home, but they're not going to be able to come home for quite a while.
Also, it depends on what you come home to. If this committee were God, and the next week from now on, there was no Lakeview, there was no big chunks of Gentilly, and New Orleans East disappeared from the street map, are they still going to want to come home?
Well, I don't. Yeah.
Are they going to want to come home and live in Bywater? Are they going to want to come home and live in a different area of the bowl? That's a good.
Right.
Our decisions, our suggestions, should we have that kind of rule of law, would have a huge effect on the footprint of the city and its shape. So
It may take 10 years before, or longer, before that area comes back to anything like it was before, which was a great community. It was a beautiful community. The same, you could say the same thing for Gentilly and New Orleans East. And the question is, do you want, if you're in your 50s or your 60s, do you want to be here and spend, you're from 60 to 70, under this rebuilding process, which is not going to be fun. I mean, it's not going to be what you would expect to be doing when you were 50, when you get into your 60s. So that's a real question.
Basic assumption of you create marsh from open water, period. That's not true anymore. You can create marsh from developed land. And that cuts across everything. And that is going to be one of the most difficult decisions we have to make. And everyone wants to know where.
So this is a zone with great opportunity for bigger moves. There's certainly collective action needed here. We're worried about the jack-o'-lantern effect that Bill talked about in this zone. These areas need, some of these areas need significant testing, particularly this area over here. Environmental testing, foundation testing. There are indications of hazards there. And that's going to take some time. There should be public investment of the nature that Virginia and Tony will talk about and Carl talked about. There's a need for land banking. And as I said, more data and more time.
First of all, this is a city that is already dense. This is a city, by dense, I mean city where people are used to living close to one another. Right now, my neighbor is 5 feet away from my house. My lot is 33 feet wide. My house takes up 28 feet of it. That only means 2.5 feet is left to either side, if it were straight, which nothing ever is in New Orleans. Nothing in New Orleans is regular and normal. That's why it's wonderful to live here. Density is not a problem. People here don't fear density. They fear the word density. They don't understand actually what it means. We could make New Orleans far more dense without any trouble at all. No problem at all to get more people in a smaller land area and thereby relinquish those land areas that we cannot currently, physically, and I believe morally support as part of a city.
And we talk about the value of our neighborhoods and the need for diversity. As I looked at the map and saw with great alarm, that it was speaking to a rumor that you all had probably not even heard about. In the first days following Katrina, that parts of the city would not be rebuilt, that they would be restored to green space. Did you not know that? And I am sure you did not. That there was a specific rumor that zip codes 70128 and 29 would be turned back to the waters and to the wetlands. That was a rumor that was outside of this city and outside of this community. And now we see the recommendation that almost validates that rumor.
I was told it was a plot like to get, everybody out and start all over with because, people set up in a different state and they got a job, they ain't gonna try to come back and try to rebuild. They're gonna, start all over again. But I hope a lot of people have a change of heart and come back because New Orleans, we must start right now, but in the future, give us another 5-10 years, we'll be back popping.
This is the first time, even relative to the San Francisco earthquake, that you've taken the whole population almost of a city and moved it out, right? And then started to ask yourself the question, how do I move it back? And if I'm going to move it back, can I move it back in a way that's more intelligent than the way it was when I moved it out? Can we ask that question? Hell yeah, we're asking it now. We can't not ask the question. What you're asking is, can we answer it in a way that's more progressive? I don't know. It's very difficult because market forces come to bear. I got a house. It was wiped out in the storm. I got an insurance policy. They'll pay me to move back into the house and fix it up, even though it's in the worst possible geographic location for sustaining a smarter city. But yeah, I'm going to go back in that house because I got money for it and it's mine and I own it. Until someone says, no, you're not.
Some really wonderful, innovative things are going on with wetlands right now, as you know. I happen to be working my day job across the lake with one of the municipalities where we're buying wetlands to do wetland assimilation with wastewater treatment, polishing out the nutrients in the wastewater before it flows into the lake. So it's a great opportunity to have these wetlands. They serve multi-purposes. It cleans your water. They protect you from floods. It's a very important in this region. So we have so many things that we can do.
You understand the biggest problem about that discussion?
We know.
What do you know?
I know it's going to turn into a racial conversation.
Yeah. It's unfortunately those areas that you're talking about are where our poor African American people live.
That's why we're going to take over this.
They're going to think you're trying to get rid of them. I've already heard it said. It's going to be a very tough discussion.
Is that one reason why they wouldn't come back? Sure.
You say they continue to be let down. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
We're not opening the schools. We're not providing temporary housing for them. We're not providing the means for them to get back. How are they going to get back? To the city. In more subtle ways, for instance, FEMA giving money, to people to live, and stay in, other areas, as opposed to trying to open temporary housing and getting these people back. Giving them money to pay to rent apartments, in wherever they are, as opposed to trying to establish some type of network of temporary housing, so that close back, to the city and the rebuilding effort.
But because of the dire shortages and because of the delays in getting the FEMA trailers and because of the problems with escalating rents on properties that are here, they have been effectively locked out. And so we must do everything that we can to get our people back to... Can I get a levy?
No.
What you want?
Have a seat. Have a seat. Where you can't go.
I need a levy on it, because you can do all these things.
Where's your house? I'll build you.
Just build me a levy.
That was kind of.
Everybody.
You know something? I want to do things that we can control. Okay? That's going to happen. The levy's going to happen. It has to happen.
Next year we'll be back in this room.
But you're right. You gotta do what we can control.
I want to do something we can go do something about. They're working on that.
If we build Category 5 levees, is anything vulnerable anymore?
Well, what happens is that the storm surge pattern becomes completely different, but you still have the flooding issues, and which follow the historical patterns. And that you can absolutely map completely accurately exactly where those areas are, and you know exactly how deep the water is going to be after a certain amount of rainfall. Yeah.
and we're not going to build Category 5 levees. It's going to take 15 to 20 years to build them. So why are we? We should just take that off. That's what Andrew said. Just take that off the table. All they're giving us money for is to design for Category 3+.
Which we didn't even really have, we find out.
Right, so that's an improvement. This is a big improvement, and that's a very expensive improvement.
Category 0.
And by next year, the mayor and the other people who are in charge, they're not even willing to say, all that we're going to have for next year is yeah, I mean, but essentially, you know, we're not even going to be at that for next year. So that's going to take a few years to get to this 3+. And I think that what we're looking for is, I mean, what we're all standing right here trying to figure out is we're looking for how do we find some solutions on this footprint issue.
All of the socioeconomic indicators show this is where the higher concentration of African American home ownership rests, and this is also where great cultural diversity in terms of our Asian population reside. And to say we're going to turn that into wetlands is an unacceptable response when we have all of the technologies of the world available to us. And if we are making decisions not based on eyes tainted by the value of community because of the color of the people that occupy them, but based on the value of people, period, then we will get the hurricane protection that we deserve.
I think committee members are all committed to the right ideas. This committee is very progressive. This is a very progressive city in terms of the people who are engaged in thinking about its future. It's not as easy to stay progressive when you get the facts on the ground and you're trying to put that person back into their house or tell that person they cannot go back to the house. Boy, I tell you what, it's easy for me to say, I don't think that neighborhood should be rebuilt. I think Lakeview should be gone. Easy for me to say it, and I'll say it right on camera, and I'll stand up and defend myself. As an urban designer, I believe that. As a human being who has to talk to you and tell you, get out of your house, that's tough. Now, I think it's less tough if I could say to you, get out of your house, but boy, do I have a deal for you. I'm going to buy your house for you, and you get first shot at this neighborhood over here where we've developed a land bank and a trading program. We will trade you this house. We'll trade you your wrecked house in Lakeview for this in-town lot that won't get wrecked, where it's got a beautiful historic home on it, that we will then help underwrite the reclamation of it. You'll have a neighborhood school. All of these things will come to you. You'll have a better life.
I just think that whatever we do, we need to send a clear message to New Orleans, because every day I take 2 or 3 calls with people absolutely in tizzy. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what's happening. They hear about all these committees, and these committees is not sending a straight, clear message. It is more confusing, and it is awful when you're at the bottom of the ladder. And in some cases, I talked to a guy the other day. He's 66 years old. He's ready to retire. His house went under. He says, I'm in a nice place in Atlanta. I drive care for a living, but I want to be home. What are they saying? Everybody hear all of this other stuff about the committee this, the committee that. To this one, to that one, to the other one. There is not a clear, simple, stupid message that's coming out of New Orleans. And I've been all around the country. And it makes us all look like ignorant, backwards people who can't do nothing right. Now, Mississippi is right next door. And some cities, some areas of Mississippi got wiped out. Drive over there. Everything is taught. Just drive over there. What is wrong with us? We organizing and organizing and organizing and organizing, and ain't nothing done.
That's totally different. Mississippi is absolutely different.
But I'm saying to you, that has nothing to do with the unclear message. As you said, unequivocally, there's no message sent. If people don't have a computer and can read NOLA.com, that the media doesn't talk about Katrina. There's nothing said. The people who make this city run are in a complete tizzy about what's next.
Yeah. Watch me, help me. That's what I'm here. I'd like to do something. I want to keep it simple, stupid, but action-oriented that'll start a process.
Down here, I think what happened was people were tired of not knowing, so a few people started gutting their houses, and from there it took off. I mean, when somebody across the street's gutting your house and you don't know what you're going to do, and the government's not really telling you anything, it's like, well, I got to do something, you know. I got to do something to you know, move forward. So.
And look, y'all coming back. If you're watching this and you're out,
somewhere else, and you got FEMA money. When it run out, you're coming back. You're lying to yourself. You ain't going nowhere. You ain't staying there. You're coming back here. Right. Peep this out. Yeah. All that stuff you be hearing on TV about New Orleans, and all they be talking about where you at and all that. Everybody talking to each other, dapping people off and all that. That stuff is not true. This thing going around here is not true. Get close on that one more time. Remember that because you know we saying straight up. So you got the diamonds in the back, chain diamonds. Remember that, baby. It's not sweet down here, bro. Okay, baby. They lying to y'all.
Jesus. No, that's all. That doesn't. Could have been the last one when we were here. You know. Where were they staying? Was it somewhere where they would have been able to get out of, or was it somewhere water?
The house was staying.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, they were working in the finished quarter. Close and shit. So y'all pretty much gone through the whole city now? I mean,
Yeah, pretty much.
taking what y'all need.
We've been on the move. We've really covered a lot of ground. Been pretty proud. Not always that motivated, but we've been moving.
You know, Gentilia. I don't know if have you been up there to see that, Adam?
I have not been to Gentilia, no.
Yeah,
No,
but
I haven't been to Gentilia.
that also seemed pretty bad. I'd say like this place, your place, and Gentilia probably.
Yeah, I know. That's back around New Orleans East and all, so I know that they had it pretty bad as well. The strangest part to me right now is like how deserted everything is.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's like walking through a ghost town right now. You know, I mean, there's nothing. Just empty.
I mean, it looks like it's been deserted for about 10 years.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
See, in this area, how you asked me before about if I think people would have stayed, even if other transportation would have been provided. This area may be different than St. Bernard as far as that goes. I mean, this being a lower income area, I know there are people back here that just couldn't afford to leave or couldn't, you know, it just wasn't possible. So you may have had people in this area that would have left had there been means, an option, if they would have been able to, but no telling. I mean, what's done is done, you know. I mean, I guess in preparing for the next one or another one, you know, I guess you assess that, but
I mean, that's the hardest part. I mean, you're doing all this work to, you know, get everybody up on their feet again, but, you know, you got another 8 months until hurricane season again, and the levees are in worse shape than they were before.
That's a big problem because, I mean, I don't know how much news y'all watch and stuff when y'all are down here, but what they're saying now is that it could be up to 15 years before levees down here will be able to withstand a Category 4 hurricane.
Yeah.
So if you take time and start rebuilding, and in 5 years or in 10 years you have a hurricane that comes through equal to this one, you know, you don't stand a chance again. So, I mean, that's another thing to take into consideration.
It's incredibly discouraging.
Yeah. You know,